Hello, everybody. Steve Grove here, Commissioner of Deed, and welcome to our Youth Jobs Roundtable today. We're thrilled to have you with us. This is part of a broader series that we are doing as an agency on the next Minnesota economy. Actually, now that I look at this, I think we're still waiting for folks to join, so I want to make sure everybody's in the meeting before we kick off. I'm seeing folks cycle in. So let's give it a second. And I'll do my exuberant introduction one more time once we have everybody in the room. For those of you watching on Facebook or YouTube, bear with us just for a second here. Okay. I think that's most of the folks. We have others coming in the lobby. Well, again, welcome to our Youth Jobs Roundtable today. Steve Grove here, Commissioner of Deed, and I'm excited for this conversation. I hope you are too. This is a topic, how to get young people into jobs this coming summer, that has just become a huge priority for our agency and for the governor, lieutenant governor, in leading our state in this next chapter of Minnesota's economy. And that is what this series of roundtables we're holding is all about. It's how do we make sure that our inclusive economic growth in Minnesota helps everyone in our economy succeed as we put COVID behind us and move towards the weeks and months ahead of recovery for our economy. And one of those huge issues is how we get more young people employed. And before we turn to a panel discussion, which is really the reason we're all here, to learn from some business leaders and students and others about finding opportunities for youth, I wanted to introduce my colleagues from Deed. I'm joined by Deputy Commissioner Hamse Warfa, who will moderate our discussion in just a moment. I'm also joined by Mark Majors, who's the Director of our Employment and Training Programs, and by Anna Peterson, who is our Head of People and Culture at Deed, also formerly ran the Step Up program in Minneapolis, so a lot of insight and experience with this topic. Now, just to set the stage a little bit before we dive into the discussion with our panelists and meet them, this has been a challenging year for young people as it relates to employment. And when you look at the statistics for 2020 as it relates to youth jobs, young people have been hit harder than other groups. And some of that just makes natural sense. We know that frontline workers have had some of the steepest challenges in our economy this last year. Low wage jobs have been hit the hardest. If you go to the next slide, you'll see some of these statistics. But youth unemployment increased 7.6% from January of 2020 to January of 2021 this year. And there's just been a huge drop in the number of employed youth in our state. Last summer, we saw the placements of youth into jobs in our state go down quite a bit. Part of it had to do with just the way the economy is going. Part of it had to do with that factor of remote work. And so we really want to see a surge in getting more young people into jobs this summer, this year, as the weather gets warmer and these opportunities really present themselves. Not only is it important for their careers, but it's important for our economy overall to get young people working. So we are excited to hear some tips from our audience today on how best to do that. And we want to set ourselves a goal. And if we go to the next slide, I want to put this out there and our panelists will discuss it. We would like to see a pretty big increase in the number of young people we find into placing in internships and jobs this summer to 6,000 across the state through our partners, through our network. We may be able to go higher than that, I think, with other employers stepping forward here, but wanted to kind of set ourselves a goal and track ourselves month over month for how many job placements we can get for young people in Minnesota. So that's a topic our panel will discuss today. And really would ask ourselves the question, how do we get there? How do we get to the point of 6,000 jobs or more placed for young people this year through our partners and through the employers you'll hear from in a moment and others. We had a roundtable last month to kick off this series on youth jobs. We learned a lot from our panelists there. Some of the high points were just we wanted to set some bold goals. So we're coming back to you today with that suggestion of a goal of 6,000 jobs. We heard a lot of feedback on utilizing partners across our state, of creating virtual opportunities for internships. I know that's a topic we'll discuss here today as well. We heard some great ideas from our panelists last month on creating new types of opportunities, whether that's having young people run your social media, work on language translation, even sitting on your boards and providing that youth perspective. And then we heard a lot of tips on just making sure we stay engaged with young people in these internships and in these jobs to make sure they're successful longer term. So some good lessons there. And I'll just say, before turning over to my colleague, Deputy Commissioner Warfa, one of the things that we're in the process of developing, and we're going to want to get feedback from this group and others on, is an employer toolkit to really share with Minnesota employers across the state on how best to think about hiring young people right now. And so we'll ask ourselves what that toolkit should include. We're going to look at things like remote work, where to find applicants, how to vet them. We're going to learn from experts on how to get that right and put a toolkit out there that helps employers across the state really navigate this moment for getting young people jobs. So we're excited about this discussion. Enough from me. We want to dive into the panel. We've got a great group here together today. Honored to turn it over to my friend and colleague, Deputy Commissioner Hamse Warfa of our Workforce Development Division, who's going to lead our discussion. So Hamse, over to you.
All right, great. Thanks, Commissioner. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really excited for this topic for a number of reasons. For one, the collective, cross-sectoral partnership that it will take, for this work to be successful for young people. So we have, business community, we have our community providers, we have the state, we have the county, we have the cities. So this participation from different sectors is what it's really going to take to be successful in providing young people the opportunities they deserve. So I'm really excited about that. Second, I'm excited we have a representative, a speaker, a panelist, who will share, her experience as both a student, but also youth participant in one of our programs. So very pleased to have Genevieve as part of this discussion. And thirdly, as the commissioner mentioned, as we think about inclusive, economic recovery, it's important that, we center this economic recovery around equity and ensuring that everything we do, we're using the lenses of equity and ensuring that, communities that have been hit hard are also at the front end of, receiving the services that they deserve. So super excited about that, and happy that we have a number of our business community participating in this discussion today. I'll just do a quick introduction of our panelists, starting with David Larson, Vice President, Support Services for Central Care in St. Cloud area. Second, Scott Cummings, Market Development Director for Accenture. Third, Eric Rasmussen, who is a Senior Manager, Talent Acquisition at Marvin Windows. Fourth panelist, Jessica Chisholm, who is the Assistant Vice President, Campus Recruiting for US Bank. Also joined by Haley Reed, who's also with US Bank. And also excited that Genevieve Mendoza, who is a youth participant and student, is joining us for this conversation. And finally, Charla Allison, who is a youth mentor and works with Genevieve, sorry for the pronunciation, as a supervisor. So excited that you're all joining us today. What I'd like to do is maybe start first with getting a youth perspective on, and with Genevieve, if you can just start us with the introduction of who you are and your experience as a youth participant and a student.
Hi. So my camera's upside down, but I don't know how to fix it. But anyway, so my name's Genevieve. I've been with Charla for a couple months now, since July, and so I've been with her for like this whole school year, and I think that it's really it's like it was a good job for me to have for my very first job, because Charlotte's been really helpful with all of the stuff I need, like even with just talking to me and like helping me with my school stuff, or like if I have questions about like banking and like cars and stuff like that, like all the like adult stuff that if I don't like want to feel comfortable asking my like mom and dad, I can go to her and I can ask her. So that's been really helpful, and it's really cool that I have like somewhere to go after school. I can come to work and do something productive and then go home and like work on my homework and stuff. So it's been really fun.
Great, thanks for sharing us. It's important information for us as public-private leaders to learn from your experience and knowledge, and so I appreciate that. I'll come back to you, but I will just move to the employer side, and the first question that I would like to ask is, just to understand, what the plan is for 2021 summer job opportunities with your employer, at your employer site, as well as your respective area. As the commissioner mentioned, last year we saw a dip in the number of participants, youth participants that got the summer jobs. We would like to see an increase of that number this year, and hopefully much higher number in the following year. So I think, collectively hitting a goal of 6,000 or more is ambitious, but we think it's doable. So just from your own perspective, if you can share a little bit about what your plans are. And I'll start with David.
I just want to make sure you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes, thanks.
Okay, very good. The old meeting check always. Well, I would say, just to comment on that, obviously 2020, we didn't expect we were going to be able to do much of anything. And I'm really proud to say that Centricare still was able to partner with Career One and our local career solutions team to provide our youth with an experience. And to really compound on that, going into 2021, we are expecting and wanting to grow the program. Just to give you a little bit of history, in 2016, Dr. Ken Holman, who's our CEO, he said in a meeting at Executive Cabinet, let's hire all of the youth in central Minnesota this summer. And everybody looked around and kind of thought, he can't be serious. Is he serious? You think he's serious? And he kind of was, but we were very terrified at the thought of how we would hire all these kids. And thankfully, and luckily, like always, there are good programs in place like Career One. And one of our executives in human resources sat on the board at the time of Career Solutions, formerly the Stearns Benton Employment Training, and knew of this program. And so we were so fortunate to have something built. And when we talk about that toolkit, I think it's important to show employers that there are, in fact, toolkits to do this, and it can be and go very well and very smoothly. So just some highlights for this year's program. We're tracking, and our goal is to have 140 youth be part of the program here in St. Cloud. And that is where Centricare is based, obviously the St. Cloud Hospital. I'm sure some of you've heard of that. But Centricare has grown and represents a very rural geography of Minnesota. And we want to see if, a few years ago, we've been successful in getting the engagement of youth in our much rural communities like Paynesville and Sauk Center. This year we have a goal for 35 students, youth, to be involved at that site. So I would just say that, our experience has been overwhelmingly positive. Not only the ease at which the team at the Career Solutions that really runs the program of Career One, but our engagement from our staff. We do a lot of things with this population that just exposes them to the business of healthcare. You mentioned my title is support services, so I have things from nutrition to environmental services to real estate, construction, maintenance. None of those terms do you think healthcare necessarily, but we absolutely employ all of those. So it's very important to expose the youth to these opportunities, their energy and excitement that comes to the workforce. We have them spread mulch in our landscaping beds, and they put our workers to shame, to be honest. The energy and the happiness that they bring to that is just so cool to watch, and the enthusiasm. So just very, very supportive. And again, I'll just point out a number, and this is how Ken said we'd figure out how to fund it. We're roughly 13,000 employees strong, Centricare. At any given time, we have 800 to 1,000 job openings. You heard me right, 800 to 1,000 job openings. We can afford to hire some kids in the summer, just to keep it simple with how Ken would put it. So, thank you.
Thanks for sharing that, David. What an exciting update to hear. Makes me think about maybe moving our goal from 6,000 to 10,000 somehow. Thanks.
Well, as Ken would describe, Hamse, that there's no excuse. There really is no excuse. We have plenty of room, and that's true. If you talk to any large business, I'd be curious, like Eric Rasmussen from Marvin, how many job openings do you have right now? It's a problem we all have. So
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks. Scott, same question, just plan for your summer as relates to youth employment.
Thanks. First of all, thanks for including us. This is great. A few ways that we're thinking about it this summer, and I would actually go back a year and say we kind of changed our mindset last year, where traditionally we have hired youth in sort of traditional internship roles, and we felt starting last year, that there probably was a shortage of youth jobs, and so we rolled out a learning experience. So it's 6 weeks. So it's like a short summer internship. We virtualized it because we said, that's the way that we could scale, where, being a professional services firm, we didn't have as many landscape beds to go fill and stuff. And so, using our, core strength, we said, well, let's create a virtual program that we can, really scale up. So last year we had, or, from 2 years ago, we probably had 10 interns. Last year we went about to 25. This year we're going to 55. And we're partnering with a few local youth programs, including Genesis Works, Step Up, and the Best Buy Teen Tech centers. And so drawing youth in from a variety of programs and placing a majority of them in this virtual learning program where we ship them all a laptop. We have, cohorts of youth that are managed by facilitators that are full-time. So it's kind of like summer school almost, but from everything I heard last year, it was much more fun. And then we still have sort of our traditional project-based internships as well. Those are frankly a little tougher to scale, but those are virtual as well. So we're making those kind of stay around as well, and then really scaling on the virtual learning side of things.
Yeah, thanks, Scott, for sharing that. Yeah, if there's anything we learned from last year, it's just the adaptation. One of the things we did here at DEED is, we pivoted a lot of some of the in-person services that we used to do to virtual, and have seen some success in that as well. Eric, to you, same question, to your plan for the summer and youth employment.
Yeah, no, again, thanks for having us today. And, the youth employment in that population has been, it's a population that Marvin has been really committed to for a number of years, and they're really important to the success of Marvin. And it's exciting being in the manufacturing setting that we're able to expose youth and students to so many different areas, not only in manufacturing and building the product, but you think about those support departments as well, where there can be human resources internships or engineering internships or research and development. So we really like to diversify the exposure that the students are getting so that they can take that and hopefully build that into their career, and hopefully, take that career and bring it back to Marvin, and we're able to build this partnership. So I would say 2020, obviously it was a very unique year. COVID presented so many challenges and so much uncertainty, but I can say in 2021, we have a really committed and dedicated focus towards getting to pre-COVID numbers in terms of onboarding the students in a number of departments and continuing to build out those programs to, again, increase the exposure for the students to have visibility into a lot of different departments as well. And we really try to partner with the schools. I think that's a big thing, focusing on the STEM programs and robotics programs and partnerships, because there's already an initial interest in how can we bring those skills and help the students in those populations build on that skills, experience, and interest.
Great. Thanks for sharing, Eric. Absolutely timely, especially as we think about automation and, the work of the future becomes critical. Jessica and Haley, if you can share your US Bank plan for the summer. Maybe we'll start with Jessica.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to take that one. So we are continuing our commitment to hiring youth here at US Bank and partnering with similar organizations that Scott mentioned earlier. Step Up, Christa Ray are some that we are partnering with to continue in that commitment. And we're going to be virtual again this year. Last year, we, as all of us did, pivoted very quickly to a virtual setting also. And due to the timing, we kept it more to mentorship and that kind of networking skill set building. This year, now that we have more experience and a year underneath our belt of working in this virtual environment, we realize we can really elevate our youth programs a little bit more. So not only increase those opportunities, but elevate the experience in terms of letting it revolve around professional development, virtual presence. How do you even engage in this setting? We're probably all learning at the same rate at this point, but giving them the skill sets they need to hopefully be successful in this environment is really what we're focusing on for 2021. So having this hybrid approach of project-based work within the banks. Of course, there are some restrictions with regulations and compliance issues of system accesses, but there's so much you can do in innovation and research and customer-centric focus that we're able to provide our interns. So that's what we're looking to there.
Great. Thanks for sharing. Haley, anything you want to add?
No, I think Jessica covered it.
All right, wonderful. Yeah, I want to go back to Genevieve for a second and ask, what has been extremely challenging year for young people. What would you say are your needs and from your perspective, the needs of young people? Anything you share with us, Genevieve?
I think just having like a good structure of what we're trying, like with our work and like with our schoolwork too. And I don't know like the grade levels for the other students and workers, but for me, I'm in my junior year, and so my kind of school workload is like kind of like a large amount. So with like having like structure with like work and all this stuff, it's been like knowing what time and all that stuff, and like having Charlotte being flexible with me, like if I tell her like this week I have like a whole bunch of tests, like she'll work with me and stuff like that, or if I need it and stuff like that.
Great, thanks. I would open maybe another question just for any of the employers. What skill sets are you hoping you're aiming for by the time that young people complete their summer program? And I ask that in part also we're running this reskilling initiative for the state, to help connect employers and job seekers. So I'm curious if you can share a little bit about, what are some of the skills that you are aiming for as an employer after the program, youth program is finished? Any of the employers can take.
I can jump in here. Thanks. I guess when we think about the virtual learning experience, we sort of bucket the skills that we want to build into two areas. One being sort of soft skills, and then the other being around youth TQ or technology quotient. So under soft skills, throughout the program, we've got sessions around professionalism, personal finance, marketing, how to behave in the workplace, communication, storytelling, public speaking. And then on the TQ side of things, it's really about getting more people conversant and aware and able to explain, key technologies like cloud, AI, blockchain, Agile, DevOps, cybersecurity, where if they are starting to understand those, where we don't have any thought that anyone's going to come out of it as an expert, but the more conversant they are, the more they'll be curious about it. And so to sort of introduce those STEM and technology topics is key, as well as the soft skills.
Excellent. Thanks.
This is Dave from Centricare. I'll just cover,
Sure.
I think one of the things that's important that to emphasize about our program, and specifically that Career One programming, is having these youth and students actually walking away with some type of a tangible, whether that be a certificate or college credits. And of that 140 youth in St. Cloud, there are opportunities for them to pick a track of focus. And selfishly, we obviously, as Centricare's involvement in recognizing we're trying to grow our talent pool for the future, we obviously have a healthcare track where students will learn things like, just like Scott mentioned, around terminology and the medical practice. They'll actually do some simulations and practicing patient care activities. They'll actually receive first aid and CPR training and get their certificate to that. So that's, again, a tangible that they take away. And then if they so choose, they can even go on and get 3 college credits for that CPR and first aid certificate. So again, we really wanted to emphasize this wasn't just about solely healthcare, and recognizing there's all sorts of industries that serve healthcare. So there's also a business track. And then we've new last year was a construction and manufacturing track that, again, it's about groups of 20 students in each of these that can get a safety course as part of that construction and manufacturing. Will walk away with an OSHA 10 certification. So those are, again, things that we feel that for the most part, when you talk to these youth as they enter the program, they don't know what any of those things are, but yet they walk away with those tangibles. And then I think that just to emphasize, with the year of COVID and remote learning, I have two young students that dealt with distance learning. I think we're going to have a strong lift to pull back or to pull up where we were from a curriculum standpoint and getting the youth, keeping the youth fresh. And I think that the base program of Career One does a good job of that. Just what was normally lost of a summer, I'm a little afraid to even look at what was lost over COVID from a standpoint of learning. So really hoping to emphasize that this year.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing. Any other employers want to add anything?
Yeah, I'll jump in here. In addition to the virtual presence been talked about and soft skills, I would also say we're trying to focus more on those critical thinking skills, giving a business problem. How do you work through that? How do you break it down? I think the mindset typically of youth at this stage of their academic career is, here is what to think. Here is how you go from step A to step C, and going in, hopefully preparing them for their next step in their academic career and going off to college. They'll need these case study work. They'll need the ability to be creative.
Excellent. All excellent points. Thanks. I'm going to open up for group discussion here, but before I do that, Commissioner, you want to add anything, or just want to make sure?
Sure. This is a great discussion, and frankly inspiring to hear all the ways you're thinking about kind of long-term career growth for so many of these young people. I guess one question I had, and we've discussed it in these panels before, but it's, you're heading into a summer where there is a tight labor market, but you're also looking at a recovery in which all kinds of folks could be hired, and it would be tempting maybe for an employer to say, oh, well, we'll worry about youth next year. We've just got to get like our core staff in the building and kind of rebuild in maybe a more traditional way. Why should that not be the way that employers look at young people in this recovery? Why should employers be looking at young people as a proactive strategy for growing your workforce? And take sort of the career track sort of CSR components out of it for a second, and just straight up like a business trying to hire a young person to work for them. Why should they think young people this year in particular, and what can we do to help motivate more employers to do that?
Yeah, we've talked about this a lot here at US Bank as well. The main reason is that in entry-level talent, we often talk about the skill gaps that are missing in that talent, and they're not quite prepared to go into that entry-level full-time role. this is the optimal time to tap into young talent at this stage to really help close those skill gaps that we're finding. So it just helps in that change. Sorry for the echo there.
Yeah, I would echo that we're not seeing necessarily the skill sets we need, even in those that are coming prepared, ready to work, and the specialized level of training. One of the things that we talk a lot about is whether there's a lot of gap in support service areas, and that's probably why I'm pretty passionate about this and involved. But it doesn't require necessarily a 4-year degree to be a plumber, a master plumber at the St. Cloud Hospital. By the way, that pays $41 an hour. Not bad. So we've been trying to capture youth so that they may recognize there are opportunities that don't lead them down a traditional path of higher education and continued learning, but more maybe technical training and technical college work while they're working. So the income is coming. I have an employee that we just talked this morning, and she's really bummed that her son doesn't want to go to college, but he's making $70,000 a year the year after his senior year of high school as a carpenter. And I said, that's not bad, Wendy. I'd be pretty proud of my son or daughter doing that. And so we're talking about some of the technical programs he could go work in and still get some actual educational training. So we're going to need that 800 to 1,000 vacant jobs. We need these youth, and we need to captivate them into the workforce as soon as we can.
Yeah, I would agree with that and kind of echo what both David and Jessica said. But I think one piece too, at least in our Warroad facility, as we onboard students, they bring kind of this sense of excitement as well that kind of, resonates with our current employees as well. So while they bring value in what they're able to produce and some of the other things, they also bring this kind of new vision and excitement and energy that really helps kind of motivate our team and gets us going for the rest of the summer. So, I mean, there's that skills piece, but there are some of those intangible kind of values that those people can bring in as well.
At the risk of piling on, I think I would add that, I think more and more employers, and certainly Accenture being one, we are looking at roles and saying, which of these really require a 4-year degree, and finding more and more that don't. And so these youth really aren't that far from being employees, right? Where we have an apprentice program now in technology where we only look for people with a 2-year associates. So certainly a youth intern who's a junior or senior in high school, they're only a couple years away from, being an employee. And, in the, kind of competitiveness for talent, if you can meet some of these talented youth just a couple years ahead of time, that's the right time to actually meet them. So it's almost that we have to do this. It's not just that it's a nice thing to do.
No, that's a great point. No, Hamse, go ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
Well, I was going to just it's a great point. I'll say we hear from employers, Hamse and I, every single day that they can't find enough workers, that the labor market is tight, even though we're in this kind of paradoxical situation, which there's still, over 300,000 of our friends and neighbors on unemployment insurance. So, what I hear you all saying is there are advantages to young people as workers like the ones you've described, and there's just a need. And employers are going to have to look in different places than they traditionally looked, given the way our labor market is playing out. So that's helpful.
Yeah, and one thing I'll just add is, just intentionality, also making sure that, as we think about youth employment, inclusive youth employment hiring, and ensuring that, actualizing equity, especially at a time when we are, at the epicenter of global racial, reckoning that we're currently experiencing. So any of the employers just want to add a little bit about how you're approaching equity and youth employment?
I can take that on.
Sure.
we're really focused on really having the access to those opportunities. I think we've kind of mentioned that a little bit throughout today, but making sure that we are present in those diverse nonprofit youth partners that we have here on the call today, and that everyone has that that equitable access to the opportunities here at the organization. It also comes from the top down. You know, our Chief Diversity Officer, Greg Cunningham, I mean, that leadership around why it's so important is what really drives our engagement and our commitment to the community from an equity standpoint.
Thanks, Jessica. Couldn't agree more. Yeah, so I guess now what I'll do is open up for group discussion. So we have providers, we have business community, we have government. And so I think we can take this conversation in two ways. One is, you know, if someone has a specific question for the panelists, feel free to ask. Or if you have idea on how we can collectively build the momentum for youth employment in this summer, how can we, you know, mobilize that effort together? Any thoughts, ideas? And the way we'll do this, you know, this is when it gets exciting, I think, you know, with the team's chat box. Feel free to either put your question on the chat box, or maybe we can take a few questions if you can use the hand raise button. So Anna, I don't know if you have Anna and Jen are helping us monitor the chat. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, there's a couple of great questions. The first one is from Mark, and he says, is there a role for chambers of commerce for helping businesses increase youth employment?
Let me jump in here. So I also serve on the board of the Minneapolis Chamber, and I think the advocacy and the cheerleading and the championing of exactly what we're doing here is a key role, where, you know, all companies, you know, can do this. And I think there's some, you know, telling the story of, look, others virtualize their program, you know, you can do it too, where, you know, it seems a little different at first, maybe it's not natural, but I think the more it's talked about, I think more companies will say, oh, I can do it and I should. And so I think a key role for the chamber is to just, spread the word.
Here's
Great.
another question I see. This one's from Chu. It's hard for youth to know about how many opportunities are out there. Could we have a portal that we can direct youth to? Youth need jobs and providers have jobs. So how can we make access easier? Great question.
I think in some ways that question is both for us as a state agency as well as the employers, I would say. So for us as an agency, one way we do that is, you know, ensuring that careerforcemn.com is the site where all job seekers, you know, go to for resources, including, you know, job opportunities, job training opportunities. And we make sure that, you know, we do targeted, you know, approach with different populations, you know, and different needs that exist in our state. But also I'm curious, maybe for the panelists, employer panelists, if you can share how you're trying to reach audience, job seekers.
Yeah, I know for Marvin specifically, it's really about building the partnerships within the schools to build that awareness. So I think the portal that's an amazing idea. But right now, most of our opportunities, we're trying to build those relationships at the school level and with the students and those types of things to spread awareness around the opportunity, not only to join the team, but also the opportunity to kind of grow skill and experience as well. So yeah, I think that was a great suggestion by whomever came up with that.
Excellent.
Hi, so I'm Charlotte, and we are, Genevieve and I are in a very small community. north of Mankato, Minnesota, and we work with Minnesota Valley Action Council. So we are in a town of 2,200. Our school is not that far away. And Genevieve is able to come over here and have that job experience. We have a small shop in our downtown to have that job experience. And I have worked with Minnesota Valley Action Council and have had youth here for probably the last 10 years. And I just think it's a great program. And for us, I think it's more the word of mouth and everything in our small community. But you're right about the chamber. It's finding out, is the chamber on board with us? Are we communicating with them? But I find it is a great, and even finding Genevieve's skills, it's that building up of the youth. It's encouraging them because they do. Genevieve's got a lot of talent, and I just really hope she takes it further. I mean, if she just grabs for it, it's there.
Yeah, thanks, Charlotte. Maybe a follow-up question for you is, number of the employers talked about mentorship. And so as a youth mentor, what are you seeing? What do you see as a need for mentorship programs for young people?
I think just being there and having that opportunity. There is a few small businesses in Arlington, and I think it's them just going around to different ones and reaching out and giving the youth opportunities. Because when you have these youth, they, like Genevieve, we're celebrating today because she just got her driving permit. So once they get that too, we only have so many businesses, but we need to get those other businesses on board also with this program, because it's good. It's just good.
Great. Thanks for sharing. Congrats, Genevieve.
Thank you.
Yes, I remember how excited I was when I got my permit 16 and a half, at the age of 16 and a half. So congrats. And any other questions you're seeing on the chat box? Anyone, feel free to use the hand raise button if there's no.
Yeah, there's some good feedback on the employer toolkit in here and a couple of comments, but no additional questions yet. So if somebody wants to unmute and ask one, please do, or raise your hand in Teams and we can do it that way as well.
If I may ask a question, I'm sorry, I'm calling in from the road, but my name is Ben Cush. I work with a collaboration of school districts in the Southeast Metro, Inver Grove Heights, South St. Paul, West St. Paul, Mendota Heights, Eagan, doing a lot of the work that you all are talking about. How are we, the ways in which we build up students, professional skill development, career awareness, and then eventually looking to connect them with a work partner in an internship experience, a mentorship experience, a service learning experience, a volunteer experience. And I'm so thankful for the business leaders that we have on the panel this afternoon. And my question is, or rather a request is, what advice would you give to career pathway seekers like myself, of which there are many growing, when we reach out to employers to find individuals like yourselves? And what I mean by that is, doing what you're doing and bringing in youth, it is a risk, but it is a calculated risk. And finding the right person within large organizations that has the positional power within the organization to say, hey, we're going to do this. Don't tell me don't tell me we can't. Please just tell me how we can make this happen. Working with, I have currently somewhere on the order of 91 interns out working this spring, but it is challenging at times to find partners that are willing to say, yep, let's bring a young person on. Let's bring a couple of young people on. I find that I have a lot of phone calls and emails that just kind of fall into the abyss because I've just not found that right person in the organization. Ideas, thoughts on that, or is there a network that we can look to of individuals to say, hey, you got to give this a go? And I'll mute now.
Great points. Thanks for sharing. A question, maybe any of the employers, you can either raise your hand or just start speaking.
Yeah, I can take it. This is Dave. You know, I think I started when I talked about our entrance into this came from the top. Our CEO, Dr. Ken Holman, felt very passionate about this, but that's not necessarily common that you'll see high level or top executives saying, let's hire a bunch of kids. In fact, we were all kind of surprised, as I mentioned, when he said that. I think it's about awareness, and I know it was talked about, several panelists talked about word of mouth, for Genevieve to tell her story to her friends and to other kids and to other youth, so that there develops a bit of a groundswell about this. And myself and Tammy Beery, the executive director at Career Solutions, we took this story on the road, if you want to call it that, and we went and met with several large employers in our market area, and we talked about the struggles of the lack of workforce in our markets. And so there was such a knowledge gap of even the program existing, and I think it's something that we can do a better job of, all of us that are experiencing the positivity of it and telling that story, and perhaps working with the state and other agencies of how do we, as a large employer, call the very people at other organizations that may be our counterpart and just tell our story about this program. That might bring some awareness. I will say, without the knowledge and the good story sharing, it's going to be tough, especially in a time where people are focusing on their core right now before they're, trying to get back to normal, which will be, profound. So like anything, it's all about telling stories and sharing those stories. And we're trying to do a better job of that here in central and greater Minnesota. And I would welcome the opportunity, if you're not making it through to an individual, let me try to call them and let me tell my story.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, the power of narrative and storytelling, very, very impactful indeed. Any other panelists that want to share or respond to the earlier question? I know we're coming close to time, and I want to be mindful of, we have some, I think, media with us today as well. But Commissioner, do you want to maybe close us off, and then we'll turn over to Jen?
Yeah, you bet, Hamse. Thanks. And media who are on, if you do have a question, please just use the hand raising function, and we'll go to you. I think what would help, I think maybe in this final round of questions, is we talked about the employer toolkit as one concrete next step we'd like to take, and I guess it's a pretty tactical step, and Anna Peterson and Hamse and team have been working on putting this together. It'll include both basically an index of all the sort of providers and placement organizations in the state that focus on younger people and job placements, but also some kind of tips. And we've begun to pull some information from partners and others who are out there. But for the employers here, what are some things that you think we should include in a toolkit, the kinds of things you think employers need to help think through this opportunity to hire more young people in the coming months? Things you'd suggest putting in there, or frankly, if there's those who are watching and want to use the chat function to give us ideas, we want to make sure that we build the right kind of resource for folks.
I think one idea would be to help create the business case for it, where, I think we've all talked through why we need to do it, but, there's different versions that can help sell it internally. Certainly this year, looking at a diversity and equity lens helped sell our case to scale it, where, we know that there's a case to just employ youth because they're going to be employees in a couple of years, but what allowed us to scale it the way we did was to have the lens of DEI and say, we can all do more in that space. And, if now is not the time, I'm not sure when is, but, using some of those other narratives to help build the business case, I think will help sell it.
Yeah, the stories matter.
Yeah.
Other things that we should include in this kind of a guide for employers.
I would also
somebody put
say,
in the chat earlier that there's a lot of probably rules that people assume come with hiring youth that is a little bit terrifying from a risk standpoint. And I think showing some of the, just a literally template around, oh, do you think your industry or your business can't hire someone under 18? Well, here's what the rules are. I think there's just a little bit of knowledge gap. And there are obviously rules, I understand that. But initially, some of our department leaders, as we talked about having youth come in, said, well, we can't have kids in here. That's, it's against the law. All right, well, let's actually talk about what we're going to have them do. Right, we're not asking them to do surgery. We're asking them to observe surgery. So, that's some of those gaps that people just assume there are rules and laws against it. So I think showing some of those just criteria, check the boxes that you can get over really quickly. And I understand, that when I talked about how Ken suggested with all of our open positions, we have room in our budget. I know it's not that simple. Some people literally balance their budget by how many open positions they have and sort of bank on that. That's obviously scalable depending on the size of the organization. But I think a lot of people simply think they can't afford it. And one thing that we ask a lot of the employers we talk to about this, and it'd be interesting to get the other panelists' opinion, but from the time of advertising for a position to actually actively recruiting a position to hiring the position to onboarding the position and training them to be successful, to have the Marvin shirt on and be proud to walk through the halls, how much money have you invested in that employee at that point, from that start to that end? And this minimal investment in the future youth, when compared to that, is nothing. And in fact, it is an investment. So that's, I think, the two biggest ones is just concern over how people hire youth and how can I afford it? And maybe within the toolkit, a very brief summary of how you do that successfully.
That's really helpful, David. Again, some good information in the chat here too about tips for supervising 14 to 17-year-old workers. That's great. Information on the barriers and how to address them, to the point you just made as well. These are all really helpful. I think just to define the universe a little bit further too here, we are stretching our definition of youth in a sense to not be the traditional sort of just internship age, but also really 18 to 24, kind of that first job window. And one of the pilots that we're running this as we speak, really with a series of partners, is to place several hundred young people in the sort of 18 to 24 category into jobs that will subsidize some of their early wages as they ramp up and be a new model, we think, for getting more people into the market. So we're kind of looking at this from a full spectrum perspective too.
I remember, Commissioner, last meeting, so those of you who have joined us, I think recall that I was about to extend the youth definition to 45 according to the Somali culture. But the agency and the commission wouldn't let me do that, so.
Well, we're all young at heart.
I think someone raised their hand, and I want to make sure we. Sorry, I think I missed the hand raising button is down now. But Anna, do you have a question or?
Nothing else in the chat.
Okay.
Commissioner kind of went through some of the toolkit. Great ideas for the toolkit. I'm taking notes furiously so that we can pull together some great resources with our partners, many of the things that I've mentioned. I know multiple of the youth programs throughout the state are offering to the employers that they're working with. So we're not reinventing the wheel here. We're just sharing the information in a really different, in a useful way, and then hoping that you'll also share that information.
Well, Hamse, I know we want to thank our panelists for joining us and talk about next steps here. Some final thoughts from you before we do that?
Yeah, I mean, Commissioner, I just maybe we'll turn over to you, but I want to thank our panelists for your generosity in joining us today, but really your commitment to this work. We know how much, all of us, I think, bring sense of urgency and responsibility, knowing that, the prosperity of our state really depends on how we take care of our young people. And I think the commitment that you all expressed today is very inspiring, and I look forward to working with you all. Commissioner, I'll turn over to you.
Yeah, well said, Hamza. Thanks for a great discussion. I would just end for all of our viewers really to ask everyone here to look for ways we can hire more young people. That goal of hiring 6,000 people this summer is an ambitious one. It'll be a stretch given the challenges that we face, but we think it's doable if every employer leans in a little bit more and looks at young people as a great source of labor for your market and looks at the broader benefit both to your company and our economy if you do it. We are going to keep tracking that number week over week. We're going to keep doing these roundtables once a month to check in. Lots of topics to explore here. And as an agency, we want to help people out. And that's the point of tools like the Toolkit that we'll release soon and others to try to help employers understand what the possibilities are and to live by the example that you've seen from a lot of our panelists today. So we know many folks already do youth hiring. If you already hire, let's say 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 young people every year, try to hire 4 or 5 or 6. We're doing that at Deed ourselves. As we look at our own internship footprint and our own youth hiring. It's a really important time to get young people into jobs, get them on a pathway to a great career, and really help meet the needs of a very tight labor market in this recovery. We know the needs are out there and want to lift up young people as just a great partners and great leaders and employers to bring into our companies in Minnesota. So Hamza, thanks for the great discussion. Panelists, thanks for joining us. Viewers, thanks for being here with us too. Until next month with another Youth Jobs Roundtable, we're grateful you were here with us today. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.